COROS Apex Pro is a multi-sport GPS watch that sits on top of the COROS family of watches. Will it get my recommendation from a hiking point of view? Find out in today's gear review video. So today, talking about the COROS Apex Pro GPS watch here. Going to be giving you a full review, and I know there's a lot of reviews on this watch on the internet, so this will be coming from my point of view as a hiker. So everything I'll be covering here and how I've been using it has specifically been thinking from a hiking standpoint. So let's give a little information about the Apex Pro here before we jump into the pros and cons. The COROS Apex Pro here comes in this green band titanium colorway as the standard color. It's also available in black and a new white as well. The price point for the watch is $499 US. The watch features the sapphire glass here, which is very hard to scratch, and then the titanium features throughout the watch, making it very durable. The display size here is 1.2 inches. The weight of the watch here ranges from 49 grams to 59 grams, depending on the band you have. This band here is a bit heavier, so this will be the 59 gram version, which comes straight out of the box. COROS claims that the watch works anywhere between 14 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about -10 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. And it's water resistant for 100 meters or about 328 feet. The COROS Apex Pro also features notifications, so if someone's sending you a text, a call, you can get all of those on the watch as long as it's paired with your smartphone. COROS also has a app that is paired with all of its watches, which makes it very easy to use. Check your data, check your workout information, your hike information, see summaries, things like that. It's super user-friendly and easy to use. So before we jump into this video further, I just want to say that this watch was provided to me from COROS, but all of my thoughts are my own. I've been using the watch for about 5 months now in a variety of activities, from couloirs to waterfall hikes in Hawaii and Colorado, for running, swimming, biking. I've used it for all kinds of different activities, but again, today we'll be focusing on hiking aspect of the watch. All thoughts in this video, of course, are 100% my own, and I have been comparing this watch to my daily user, which is the Garmin Fenix 6X Pro. So I'll be mentioning a couple times in the video when I compare it to watches. That's what I'm using as my comparison. Obviously, two very different watches, and won't be any kind of comparison in the video, but there needs to be some kind of point of reference. Let's talk about the pros for the COROS Apex Pro watch here. So right out of the box, it's very easy to use. I found that a lot of the widgets, so whether it be snowboarding or hiking or climbing, whatever widget you're using to track, they've done a really good job at making sure that the fields that display make sense for the activity. So there's very little customization needed in my experience. And when you do need to customize it, it's very easy to do that. You can do it either through the app itself or on the watch. You don't have to use computer software to update the widgets like some other watches have you do. You can just do that through the app, which is nice. You don't have to get a computer involved if you don't want to. The watch is super comfortable. As I mentioned the weight before, when you're wearing it for long days, you really forget it's there most of the time, so absolutely no issues with comfort. In terms of how it looks on the wrist, this is my wrist here. I have a pretty average size wrist, I would say, for a male. Jackie has worn this watch as well. It's a little big for hers. Her wrist is smaller than me, but I would say overall, it's not an overly clunky or big watch. It really kind of fits into that daily use pretty nicely. So now that we've talked about all the fun stuff, let's get into more of the nitty-gritty here. So in terms of tracking, I found that the COROS Apex Pro has been fantastic on that side of things. I've used other watches where when I get to the top of a hike or to a high point or to a point where I know the elevation should be something, and the watch tells me something completely different. The COROS Apex Pro has been fantastic in that sense. I've got to the top of numerous 13ers, so 13,000 foot mountains, 14ers, etc. And when I go back and check either in real time or compare it after the hike, the accuracy is phenomenal. sometimes exactly right, sometimes off by less than 20 feet, which to me is acceptable when you're hiking a 14,000 foot mountain with thousands of feet of elevation gain. COROS, if you're unfamiliar with them, they are really known for their battery life. I would say that the battery life on here is absolutely lives up to its standards. I've been comparing the battery life with, again, my Garmin Fenix 6X Sapphire here. This is a much higher price point watch, and the battery life for the COROS Apex Pro here is almost identical. So what that translates to, I found that on average, it's getting me between about 25 and 30 hours of GPS tracking activities. Again, I'm not using any kind of battery saving mode. That's just the watch straight up. In terms of non-GPS, I mean, you could easily wear this watch for 3+ weeks without needing to charge it. Its battery life is that good. But obviously, whenever you're using GPS, it takes way more battery life out of any kind of wearable. Still very impressive. You can really leave the charger at home for any trip that's under a week, unless you're doing crazy amounts of hiking. What I really like about the app is it's super user friendly, and it also can be used without Wi-Fi or cell phone service. So this is nice if you need to make a quick tweak to the watch face, to a widget, etc., and you don't have service. It's still something you can do, which is nice. Let's talk about the heart rate monitor here for a second. So in general, anytime you have a heart rate monitor you're wearing on your wrist versus your chest, the chest is always going to be more accurate because your heart's right here. It's just basic science in that sense. But the wrist heart rate monitor I found to be fairly accurate. So I've compared it on hikes with wearing my chest heart rate monitor, and the data is off a bit, but for most people who are going to be using this heart rate monitor, it's not going to be something you're going to be living and dying off of. If so, please don't do that. But it's accurate enough within 5 to 10 beats per minute in most cases. Sometimes it's very in sync. It just kind of depends on the activity. But still, the sensors, the GPS, and the heart rate, very impressive overall. When you're using the watch, whether it be especially during a tracking activity, and the battery does become low, before it'll power off or go into low power mode, which I'll talk about in a minute, it will automatically save the activity. This is extremely nice if you're doing a long backpacking trip, a long hike, etc., where you don't want to lose that data and you forget to save before the watch powers off. So kudos to COROS for thinking about that. COROS has a really cool feature for hikers that spend time at high elevation. What they consider high elevation is anything above 8,250 feet, or about 2,500 meters. So what essentially happens is the watch will ask you, do you want to enter high elevation mode? At this point, the watch will start sending you updates using a blood oxygen meter, and it'll tell you whether you can keep pushing it or whether you should turn around. So this is really nice for people who maybe aren't used to spending time at high altitude or spending time at altitudes higher than they're used to, and the watch will literally be monitoring your body, saying, hey, maybe you don't want to keep pushing it here, let's lose some elevation. This can be extremely helpful to help mitigate or avoid AMS or acute mountain sickness, which is basically getting sick at high elevations. I have to mention this because it's a cool feature. I'm not exactly sure, the usefulness of it, but I have never seen it on another watch before. So the COROS will show you on the watch here where all of your satellites are. So that's again, just a cool little feature I haven't seen before, so I thought I'd mention it in the Pro. In general, I would say that COROS is a newer company, obviously, to the wearables space, and so what I really like about them, unlike some other companies, is they really I feel like they have something to prove. And so they're often updating widgets, i.e. the activities you can track on the COROS Apex Pro here. They're often just making general updates to the software, to the app, to the training programs, things like that. So I feel like it's, as a COROS Apex Pro owner, what we buy, right out of the box, a couple years down the road might be a better product. Even by the time you watch this video, there could be things I'm talking about as, say, a negative that I'm about to get into that COROS might have updated. So I really like that about COROS in general. So definitely a good company to watch out for. Of course, not everything is peaches and cream with the COROS Apex Pro. So I'm going to get into some of the cons for me while using the watch from a hiking perspective. COROS Apex Pro does feature a touchscreen. I'll show you it here a little bit. You can see it better in my B-roll shot, but the touchscreen in general is really available on so few features that I find it kind of useless. I think they're trying to use it more as a marketing gimmick than something that's actually functional. Also, from a hiker's perspective, sure, in the summer where you're not wearing gloves and you can easily use a touchscreen, I think that's nice. But for a watch that, in my opinion, should be versatile all year round, a touchscreen really doesn't make sense on a wearable for outdoor space, because in the winter, you don't want to be popping off gloves to use the touchscreen. So I just don't think it's very helpful to have on the watch personally. And what they have implemented it on so far is so few screens that, to me, it's like, why even have it in the first place? So the Apex Pro here features a 3 buttons here on the side to easily navigate the watch screens. As I mentioned, it's very intuitive to use. The one feature here that I don't love is the wheel. So the wheel here will basically help you navigate through screens. It'll help you navigate through different fields when you're in an activity. But I don't love the wheel because it's very clunky to use if you're wearing gloves. So even if you're wearing a pair of light gloves, like I've been running with it before, and it's just hard sometimes to turn that wheel to see the next screen. You can adjust the features and play around with the wheel settings, but in general, I'm just not really a big fan of that. I'd prefer if they just stuck to the up and down buttons that most other watches use. So let's talk about the price point for a bit. So as I mentioned, this is $499 US right out the box. I feel like that price point is pretty high for what the watch has. So one of the other big negatives about the COROS Apex Pro for hiking perspective is the lack of navigation, the lack of maps, Wi-Fi, weather, music, things like that. So for me, most of those features are not super crucial. I don't use them all the time on the watches that have them. But the one thing that really is a negative for me is the lack of map. Now, COROS does have the option to load routes into the watch, but these routes are essentially just a red line that you can follow with absolutely no topographical features. So if you had a super straightforward hike and you just kind of wanted something to give you guidance, it would suffice. But if you have anything where, let's say, there's multiple trail junctions and you're not sure which one to take, or there's an elevation feature, a steep gully, something like that you need to know exactly where to go, the watch is not going to really help you with that. If you're lost and you need to navigate out, knowing how to read a topographical map, again, this won't help you for that. So for me, it's a bummer, especially at the price point of $499. What I find that you're paying for at that high price point is really the battery life. It's just kind of disappointing to not have those extra features. Even if you don't use them for the price point, I feel like it should have a couple of them. Especially when you talk about the COROS Apex Pro being kind of the top of the line, if not the top of the line for COROS at the time of this filming. It's disappointing to not have maps as a feature, even if you perhaps had an upgrade version, so the COROS Apex Pro Maps version, let's say. I talked about battery a bit earlier as being a pro, but I wanted to touch on one of the negatives for the battery, which is once the battery gets below 5%, essentially it'll tell you it's low power, the watch needs to be charged, and it'll stop tracking all activities that you're doing. So if you're in the middle of a hike or a run or whatever, it'll stop tracking. Now, it will save the activity like I mentioned earlier, but essentially you won't be able to use the watch for anything. So you'll have your main screen here, and that's about it. You can't even use the backlight. You can't change fields. It's just whatever is displaying here on your home screen, that's what you get. So what's to me kind of crazy about that is, so really your watch will have 95% battery life at all times, which is a bit disappointing. Once the watch gets below 5% battery and then gets to 2% battery, essentially there'll be a screen that displays that just says, please charge, and the watch becomes absolutely useless at that point. It won't even show you the time. So I just don't really understand why that's available. The 2% screen, sure, maybe have that be the static screen that you get here, because really having the watch at 2% and telling you to charge, well, it's not a watch anymore. It's just something that weighs your wrist down. So final thoughts on the COROS Apex Pro here. I think it's a great watch, to be honest with you. I think for hiking, the accuracy of the GPS, of the altimeter, of the heart rate monitor, the feature to track you at high elevations, to kind of keep track of your blood oxygen levels, that's really cool. So I think for most hikers, or those hikers, let's say maybe who are on the newer to maybe intermediate side, this watch is perfect. It's not going to give you those extra features like the maps, like the music, like Wi-Fi. But if you're just getting into hiking and you really want to kind of track basic things, distance, elevation gain, things like that, this is perfect. It'll last you forever, and it really takes care of your basic necessities for data while hiking. Overall, I think it is a good watch. I think the price point maybe is a bit too high in my opinion, so $500. Maybe this is a more digestible watch than say the $300 to $400 range. I understand you're getting the battery life, but for me, the extra features that it lacks, it's just a bit disappointing. But overall, the COROS Apex Pro is a great quality product. One thing to kind of talk about here too, if you don't like this green band, there's plenty of aftermarket ones you can get on Amazon or other sites, so you can easily change the colors out as well. So that's gonna wrap up my watch review here of the COROS Apex Pro. Let me know if you have this watch, what you think of it, in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it at all helpful. If you're new to my channel, I do gear reviews, hiking guides, hiking tips, and so much more based here in Colorado and beyond. So go ahead and hit that subscribe and then bell button not to miss any future hike related content. To shop virtual Sherpa gear, you can check the links in the description below. As always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next adventure.